On this Sunday night, the inaugural Mass for the new Pope. The ceremonies and celebrations for Pope Leo at the Vatican. His meeting with Prime Minister Carney as international politics unfold behind the scenes. Tragedy at the Brooklyn Bridge. What led to this ship's deadly collision with a New York landmark? Plus, business without borders. The ambitious plan to dismantle interprovincial trade barriers before Canada Day.
Go, Leafs, go! Go, Leafs, go!
And a do-or-die matchup in Toronto. Can the Leafs pull off a hockey miracle to break a decades-long playoff slump?
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Tens of thousands of well-wishers, including world leaders, European royalty and dignitaries, packed St. Peter's Square today as Pope Leo XIV officially opened his pontificate. He toured the piazza in his Pope-mobile, a rite of passage ahead of his inaugural Mass. Good evening and thanks for joining us. It is a momentous occasion that signals the beginning of a new era for the Catholic Church, guided by the first ever American Pope. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, a practicing Catholic, sat in the second row for the Mass. His Vatican visit is not only spiritual, but a strategic blend of faith and foreign affairs. Our Mackenzie Gray begins our coverage from Rome tonight.
Descending the steps into St. Peter's Square, Pope Leo XIV arriving at his inauguration to officially start his papacy.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Sunday's Mass over 2 hours long, a combination of music
Deus qui providentiae tue consilio
and prayer in front of a crowd of tens of thousands of faithful, who the Pope greeted in his first ride in the Pope-mobile, waving at 3 generations of the Wu family from Toronto, who flew into the Vatican for the inauguration.
Almost feels like you can reach out and touch him, but he was looking over and I had Michael on my shoulder. And so the Pope always looks to little kids, so he was waving over at us.
Camminiamo incontro a Dio e amiamoci a vicenda tra di noi.
When Leo addressed those in attendance, he spoke of the need for love and unity in a new world where peace reigns. The well-wishers included Prime Minister Mark Carney, a practicing Catholic and active participant in today's Mass, kneeling during the Eucharist. When Carney first got close to the Pope, he whipped out his phone and snapped a picture. Later, Carney, his wife and daughter also got a proper opportunity to meet the Pope, along with other world leaders, including U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance.
Good afternoon.
But it was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky who got the first official sit-down with the Pope, as the Vatican's offered to help broker peace with Russia.
La martoriata Ucraina.
An offer referenced when speaking during Mass. Leo saying the martyred Ukraine is waiting for negotiations for a just and lasting peace to finally happen. A message backed by Carney and a key topic that was brought up when the Prime Minister met with J.D. Vance.
There is a path for peace. The obstacle to peace is Putin. The reason we have a war is Putin.
Mackenzie Gray joins us now from Rome. Mackenzie, Mark Carney held a press conference shortly after the Mass where 2 issues central to his campaign came up: housing and finance. What can you tell us there?
Domestic confusion has followed Carney here to Rome, Carolyn, where he was forced to clean up comments made by 2 ministers. The first, Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, who said there would not be a full federal budget in 2025, but Carney has backtracked on that, promising one will come in the fall to give the government time to understand the impact of U.S. tariffs.
We will have a much more comprehensive, effective, ambitious, prudent budget in the fall. You do these things right.
I also asked Carney about these comments made by the newly appointed housing minister last week.
You think home prices need to go down?
No, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy, but we need to be delivering more affordable housing.
Gregor Robertson's view drew the ire of both the opposition and housing experts, who have said it could take at least 20 years for wages to catch up to current housing prices, making it challenging for younger Canadians to buy a home, leading Carney to say his election promise to double the rate of housing starts in Canada would eventually push prices down.
once we increase as a country the rate of home building, then that is going to make home prices much lower than they otherwise would be. But that's a medium-term effect.
Strong economic stewardship and housing were two keys to the Carney campaign, Carolyn, and making sure messaging is clear with his ministers will be crucial when the House of Commons returns later this month.
Mackenzie Gray in Rome tonight. Thank you. And we have breaking news. Former U.S. President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. A statement from Biden's personal office says the cancer has spread to his bones. Biden received the diagnosis on Friday and is reviewing treatment options with his family. A dramatic scene in New York City last night when a Mexican tall ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge. It happened as sailors were standing on the beams of the mast. 2 people with the Mexican Navy died. 20 others on board were injured, some critically. Candice Cole has more on what unfolded.
Onlookers in shock as they witnessed this Mexican Navy ship crash into the Brooklyn Bridge Saturday evening as sailors standing atop the horizontal beams of the sails braced for impact. This video capturing the terrifying moment right before the ship's 45-meter mast collided with the iconic bridge in the East River as it set sail for Iceland.
It felt like maybe that there was something wrong from the moment they got out into the river and they were fighting that. It was kind of like a slow motion event unfolding.
Our hearts were skipping a beat because it was just horrible how it sounded. We heard like this wood crunch, which was just horrifying.
Officials say the ship lost power, causing the ship to go in the wrong direction under the bridge. 2 crew members were killed and 22 people were injured aboard the ship. New York Mayor Eric Adams says the city worked closely with the Coast Guard to get everyone off the ship, but New York Senator Chuck Schumer hinted that the Trump administration's interference with Coast Guard operations may have contributed to the accident.
We need to know how this meddling might have impacted the events of last night. There are many more questions than answers as to how the accident occurred and whether it could have been prevented.
The city will work with the Mexican ambassador to reunite families of the crew with their injured loved ones. The ship, named after the last Aztec emperor, is used as a training vessel for the Mexican Navy. It was visiting New York as part of a 5-day program hosted by the South Street Seaport Museum, offering onboard tours to the public. The Brooklyn Bridge was not damaged, according to officials. The National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating the cause of the crash. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
In California, a car exploded outside a fertility clinic in Palm Springs Saturday, killing 1 and injuring 4 others. The blast blew a hole in the wall of the clinic and damaged several other buildings nearby. The FBI says the attack was deliberate.
The subject had nihilistic ideations, and this was a targeted attack against the IDF facility. Make no mistake, we are treating this, as I said yesterday, as an intentional act of terrorism.
Authorities have named 25-year-old Guy Edward Bartkus, who died in the explosion, as the primary suspect in the attack. The fertility clinic is closed for the weekend. All staff are safe, and the IVF lab and stored embryos were not damaged. In Toronto, an early morning crash has torn a family apart. 3 children were killed in the collision that Toronto police say was allegedly caused by an impaired teenage driver. It happened on an off-ramp from Highway 401, and Global's Karen Lieberman is there for us tonight with the details. Karen.
Carolyn, 2 brothers and their younger sister are dead, and a 19-year-old is now facing impaired driving charges after a horrific overnight crash here in Etobicoke. Toronto police say a mother, her 4 children, and an acquaintance were stopped at a red light when the minivan they were riding in was struck by a Dodge Caravan exiting the highway allegedly at a high rate of speed.
The Dodge Caravan went over a race median and collided with the Chrysler minivan, caused 2 children to lose their life right at the scene.
The 2 boys, brothers, were 15 and 13 years old. Their 6-year-old sister was rushed to hospital, where she too was pronounced dead. A 4th sibling, their 10-year-old brother, and the children's mother and friend were also rushed to trauma centers with serious but non-life-threatening injuries.
Toronto police arrested Ethan Laholier of Georgetown, 19-year-old male, with numerous charges of impaired causing death.
12 charges in total. Police say he lost control of the vehicle and failed to stop at a red light before slamming into the Pacifica. September will mark 10 years since a devastating impaired driving crash left 3 children and their grandfather dead. The driver, Marco Muzzo, was granted full parole in 2021.
There's just no excuse to drive impaired. And I know that no one ever thinks they're going to get into a crash or to hurt somebody or kill somebody or hurt themselves. But it happens to somebody every single day across the country.
Police are appealing to witnesses who may have seen the Dodge Caravan traveling eastbound on the 401 to contact them, and anyone with dash cam footage to please come forward. Carolyn
Lieberman, thank you. It's been over 2 weeks since 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack went missing in Pictou County, Nova Scotia. Despite being scaled back over a week ago, search efforts were renewed this weekend in the woods where the 2 siblings are believed to have wandered into. Heidi Petracek is in the area tonight. Heidi, what can you tell us?
Carolyn, conditions have been far from ideal on this search day Sunday, but the search manager says crews wanted to come out to see if they could find any sign of Lily and Jack.
Way to go.
More than 100 volunteers scoured the thick woods in this remote part of Nova Scotia this weekend in an unprecedented search.
This is one of the longest searches the provinces have seen, with the most manpower on site.
They're looking for 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack, believed to have wandered away from their home May 2nd. The intense initial search for the children was scaled back after 6 days, after the RCMP said it was unlikely they'd still be alive. But searchers don't want to give up.
We want to find them and bring them home.
I don't know if they're out there in the woods. I mean, searchers are doing everything they can, but as from the beginning, I called for abduction.
The children's stepfather doesn't know if police are looking into that. The RCMP has said there's no evidence the siblings were taken. Investigators are following up on almost 200 tips and have identified 35 people for interviews. The case has sparked rampant speculation online, much of it targeting Martel and the children's mother, which he calls nonsense. When asked if he had anything to do with their disappearance,
I 100% did not, and I will hold that till my last day on this planet.
He thanks search crews for giving him hope.
To every search and rescue, it doesn't matter if you're on the ground or if you're in the air, you're doing a great thing.
What happens next is still to be determined, whether search crews will continue or take a break and come back at another time. But the investigation into just where Jack and Lily Sullivan went will be ongoing. Carolyn.
Heidi Petracek, thank you. Next, a somber anniversary. Palestinians in Canada say it's time to teach students about the historical suffering of their people 70 years since the Nakba. Israel launched more airstrikes on Gaza in the last 24 hours, killing more than 100 people. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, women, children, and journalists are among the dead. Northern Gaza's main hospital was also forced to close. Israel says it has begun an extensive ground offensive to gain operational control of the Palestinian territory and will allow a limited amount of humanitarian aid in as a hunger crisis grips Gaza. This past week, Palestinians marked 77 years since the Nakba, which translated from Arabic means catastrophe. The event during the Arab-Israeli War in 1948 forced 700,000 Palestinians from their homes following the creation of Israel. As Neetu Garcha reports, some say the need for education on this subject has never been more urgent.
When they partitioned Palestine?
This Nakba Day event aims to shed light on the 1948 mass displacement of Palestinians.
What's happening in Gaza, this is a continuation of the Nakba. What's happening in the West Bank is a continuation of the Nakba.
Palestinian Canadian Arwa Shurab says the same violence that uprooted her father decades ago continues to shape lives today. 6 months after the war in Gaza began, she finally got a hold of her friend there.
She lost her mother, sister, and husband. And that's just one of the stories.
In Gaza, aid groups are warning a U.S.-backed Israeli plan for aid risks enabling war crimes during worsening starvation and militarized controls of deliveries. This Palestinian restaurant owner is raising funds for organizations providing aid in Gaza. He says they're finding common ground with indigenous people like entrepreneur Dakota Bear.
I think we share a decolonial struggle, collective
hope, collective action.
BC government, hear our call! In BC, this kids-led rally this month pushed the province to include the Nakba in school curriculums.
The Nakba, known as the catastrophe to Palestinian people, is known as the 1948 war, or the War of Independence for Israeli people.
In a statement to Global News, the BC Education Ministry said the grade 10 social studies curriculum will be expanded in the coming school year to further focus on discriminatory policies and injustices. But that's not specific enough, say advocates and this University of British Columbia professor.
It's very interesting to me as a scholar that our premier, for example, would make Holocaust education mandatory to deal with anti-Semitism, but wouldn't make the same statement and say, we're going to teach about the Nakba.
He says a lack of specific historical requirements in the BC curriculum can lead to gaps and a lack of consistency in how these events are taught.
Capable of walking.
Many of those marking Nakba commemorations say history must be taught if healing and justice are ever to follow. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Ahead, Prime Minister Carney's ambitious goal to break down interprovincial trade barriers by Canada Day. Is it attainable? Next. In the face of U.S. President Trump's tariffs, Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed to bring down all interprovincial trade barriers by Canada Day to bolster economic growth. But with only about a month and a half to go, that goal seems like a tall order. And Gaviola looks at just how feasible the plan is.
With the strokes of two pens, Manitoba and Ontario made a pledge to scrap trade barriers between them to harmonize regulatory differences.
When it comes to interprovincial trade, we're willing to knock down these barriers.
Impacting everything from labor laws and safety rules to alcohol sales.
Our two provinces already do approximately $19.5 billion of interprovincial trade every single year, but we can do better.
The clock is ticking on Mark Carney's so-called One Canadian Economy initiative. A lofty goal, remove interprovincial trade barriers by Canada Day. Veteran MP Dominic LeBlanc leads the charge.
He has a good way to try to bring people together and doesn't start with a hard edge.
Working with Chrystia Freeland, who keeps her role as Minister of Transport and Internal Trade, the business community is hopeful problems that have long hampered economic growth can be tackled.
I'm more optimistic on internal trade than I have been at any point in my 30-year career in public policy, because it does seem like the stars are aligning and an external threat can sometimes sharpen the mind.
The external threat is Trump's tariff war, along with intimidating rhetoric about annexing Canada. A potential unifying force, but is it enough?
Does he have that ability, though, to leverage and convince Alberta, Saskatchewan in particular, that you need to help out here? I don't know that he's necessarily going to have the winning formula.
A winning formula needed to convince the heads of those provinces to make changes that will meet resistance from important sectors, including agriculture, in a little over 7 weeks. With slow growth, rising unemployment, and productivity that's been declining for 4 decades, it's already an uphill battle economically. It will take time to reap the benefits of reducing barriers within our own country. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Well, there is still hope for Leaf fans, however, with the team hosting its biggest hockey game in decades tonight. If they win this Game 7, the Leafs will reach the conference finals for the first time since 2002. Standing in their way, the defending champions, Florida Panthers. Lexi Benedict is in Toronto. Lexi, how are fans feeling tonight?
Hey, Carolyn, it is the big Game 7 tonight, and fans are excited, but also nervous because they know everything is on the line tonight. Leaf fans are feeling confident after Friday's win, where the Leafs got a shutout victory after Game 5's 6-1 loss. But of course, the Leafs haven't won a Game 7 since 2004, so cautiously optimistic would be the vibes here today.
Is it the team that we saw in Game 5 or the team that we saw in Game 6? Both embody this era. The tantalizing talent and potential of the team versus their ability to execute on that talent and potential. And I think that's That's where the apprehension will come from.
But if there's one thing we know about Leaf fans is that they're confident, they're resilient, and they have a lot of faith in their team. And here's what some of them had to say ahead of tonight's game.
A little nervous, but I think after the way Matthews came out last game, we have a good chance tonight. It's been like 23 years, so we're due.
100%, they're definitely going to win. Go Leafs! So fans are fired up, they're ready, and they're hoping that the Leafs can finish the job tonight. But we'll just have to see what happens. I'll send it back to you.
Lexi Benedict outside Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. Thank you. And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Carbonear, Newfoundland and Labrador, Jasper National Park, and a patriotic beaver figurine in Saskatoon. Keep sending your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.